It's on the light one.
Feels like just a couple minutes since I started.
Your favorite. Are you guys ready? Yep. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:59. And I'll get started by reading our territorial acknowledgement. The town of Colhurst is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. All right, so it's our first meeting back after quite a while, it feels like now. First of all, we'll start out with the adoption of the previous minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the minutes?
I move the adoption of the minutes of the 15th regular meeting held August 9th, 2022.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And then go to the adoption of the agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move for the adoption of the agenda as circulated.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right, and so we will move right on to business arising from the previous minutes. First one we have here is the Minister of Municipal Affairs for our meeting with the minister. And I was just looking at this, and so it does look like, we do have a time set for when we're up in Calgary for Alberta municipalities. I did notice on here that there was a request to respond by the 30th. Are we still okay to do that even though we're past that date?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we did respond
Okay,
already on the basis that we had requested the meeting and they granted it, so it
great,
seemed that somebody would attend, at least if not all.
perfect.
It was during the resolution session, during the agenda too, so, but something not all.
Is there any questions on this item?
No, but we probably would want to, have some kind of discussion as to what we're going to be talking about. I mean, I understand it's about some of the increased pressures on small communities in terms of financing, but should we have a bit of a concise message that we carry forward?
I thought that you had some good ideas at one of our meetings. I can't remember what they are right now.
It was kind of like that was, the rising costs of the municipalities, compared with the downloading of provincial costs, the retrofit from the RCMP, because of the increased cost of policing, that kind of thing, definitely a call to mention.
So go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did, if you look at the second page of the new package there, the request was put in, the topics that were just mentioned by Council Florence were some of the ones that, and the rest of council, I guess, but that's what I indicated to the minister.
I think it's important though that we have a really clear message around those topics, right? We have to have a really strong, clear message and keep it like provincially based. Because if we don't keep it specific to what we're asking them, they'll jump on the other items and not respond to the provincial responsibility.
What if we put together some key messages along with this, because I'm assuming our meeting isn't very long.
Yeah. 15 minutes to that.
Just 15 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yes, so really strong key messages.
All right, topic. I can work on some of those and share them around with everybody, and we can make sure they're all good with it, if that works.
Sure.
Okay, nothing else for that item, we'll move on to the next one here, so this is Select County notice of decision for the development permit. Does anyone have any questions on this item here?
No?
Is there anything in particular that we need to know about that one, or is it just more for?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. This was one that we did pass a resolution that we had no concerns with this particular one, because it is off the Highway 25, so it's not impacting the road or, potential town involvement anyways, and we feel it's a concern.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, so here we've got a note from FCM regarding the RCMP retroactive costs. It looks like there's almost like a templated letter here for us to send. So yeah, how to maybe I'll just turn this over to you, you can kind of give a little synopsis of this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, there's sort of the back and forth, a little bit of FCM stance on it, whether that the president had written there, and then some comments from the minister at the time. And basically now they're just looking for support from the MPs, I guess. So they're asking you to approach your MPs in terms of getting that message through to government that they don't want these retroactive pay increases as a result of the negotiated agreement with the RCMP a couple of years back to be passed on to us because of the fact that in cases like ours where new municipalities paying for RCMP costs, now if we have to go back and pay some further retro, even though it might only be from a portion for a couple of years that we've been on, it's already a burden to us and is increasing for the next couple of years as it is. And in some cases for others that have been paying, the bigger municipalities, it is quite a, potentially major cost to pass on. It's backdated in money, so instead of having to pay for more. So they're just looking basically for, as you said, that template email to be sent to your MP, and basically, I'll hope that they will, in our case, it's a member of the opposition, relay that message to the government in terms of dealing with this. I don't think any firm decisions have been made yet, so they're just hoping to keep the ball rolling to stop that.
This would definitely be where we start to advocate for that, by not wanting to have the retroactive pay. I mean, it's an increased burden. So I was trying to click on that to print up the letter earlier, but would it be a good decision for us as a municipality to send that letter?
I don't know, what do you guys think? Like, are you asking that, like, do you think it would be?
Just to the group at large, I think it would be a good
Yes.
idea. I think we should have, because we will be hit. If we're going to say that we have an additional financial burden, it has to be both to the federal and to the provincial, for what their, the download cost to us, right?
So what, Councillor Florence?
Yeah, absolutely supports and this letter to our MP and would hope it works its way up there with many other letters.
Go ahead, Councillor Harkins.
Thank you. I think this just reinforces the message that we're trying to send about costs being downloaded on the municipalities between provincial and federal levels. I think it's a good idea. It's nice that they have the template and it can
Yeah, because they haven't made a decision, so we're not asking them to overturn a decision, but often when there's they put out feelers, and if there's a big enough response saying, you know what, we're not comfortable with this, and then they don't make the decision that we have to fight, right?
All right, would somebody like to make a motion that I write this down?
I'll make that motion. I'll make that little motion to direct administration to please complete the template letter on behalf of the municipality in support of the position for FCM.
Great, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right, so now moving on here to the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General, the Alberta Police Service Deployment Model Report. Is there any questions on this item I believe that we did oversee this as well. Or any discussion?
No, this is just gonna be ongoing and it's gonna become increasingly contentious, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, was there anything within that you wanted to highlight or?
No, I think basically it's indicated there, you know, that it's just more and more and more inundation of information you see on the agenda. There seems to be a lot of webinars to meetings with the minister to, this is kind of the deployment model that they talked about. I understand, I think that the mayor actually attended a meeting with the minister and a couple of municipalities as well, just started getting back to holidays, I understand. So, and I think this is some of the information from what I understand may have been presented to some degree and further meetings coming up in our discussions with these. So, and again, they're indicating no decision has been made. However, they still seem to be pushing it pretty hard. But that's the way to go. But there is kickback from the RCMP side of things too. So.
Yeah, their response to the information that's being sent out has been quite strong from the RCMP itself.
Sure, the big item at the convention as well. So.
Yeah, I had that meeting, it was with Fort McLeod and Process Maps.
Mhm.
And it was with Minister Shandro. And, it was actually, I felt it was quite a good meeting in a sense that to me, it seemed like we were being involved in the process regardless of if they made up their mind or not. But looking much more for consultation in terms of what this could look like for the municipalities. And one of the things they did mention is creating a working group that would include municipal representatives to look at that more so from that point of view. He did indicate that no decision was final at this point. However, we are seeing a lot of stuff come out, as we've said. One of the big things that did get brought up was there's a couple of things. One was recruitment in terms of, are we going to have would this provide a qualified force? And from my understanding, Mr. Shandro is part of the Calgary Police Commission. And so I talked a lot about how they did some recruitment strategies there and kind of talked about, recruiting people even from, I think they got some people in from Ireland at that point. And then the other thing was, again, the cost of it and just understanding the cost. He again reiterated that the implementation, that would not be passed on to municipalities. But when I did ask if we would have would we have to pay, kind of like our requisition to the RCMP, he said that it was kind of like it was basically like yes. So that part would remain, that there'd have to be some type of, I guess, requisition or something happening there is kind of how I understood it. So the other big thing I think that was kind of taken away is that we haven't had a lot of really good information to make a decision. It's been kind of high level and not very specific. And so that was taken back, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but it was something that was kind of heard as a concern.
That's really good to hear, and you see that the advocacy efforts from Alberta municipalities now is asking for, like they're looking for like police task forces as opposed to a new policing model, right?
Yeah.
So I like the idea of task force.
Yeah. I felt like it was a lot different than what we'd experienced earlier in the year when we had the engagement sessions that were very more about telling us information. This actually felt like there was more of this desire to actually hear the concerns that were being brought forward. So
It's really good.
I guess we'll see what happens. Okay, so then along with that one, it is the Alberta Municipalities Public Safety Task Force that you were just referencing. Is there any discussion on this item here?
Although I think it's a great idea. I love the idea that they're pushing for more sort of services to surround, the policing with mental health and those kinds of things.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one here. This is the large stockpile. We did receive a letter of concern and about the future plans. So I know that I had just requested to kind of advertise how we were going to respond to this. So I'll just turn it over to you to kind of get the conversation started here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess like I say, that sort of during holidays or whatever, there was a lot of chatter on this, definitely, for sure. I guess as a result of that, there was a fair bit of information put out by administration in terms of the overall project, the actual total plans of the project, the total stormwater master plan, as well, various concerns that were brought up with the engineers and the contractors through the bi-weekly meetings that we have had. Recently, this week, there was one that our director of operations was at, I was on, but there was one previous week, certainly. So in terms of obviously the items such as dust factor and whatever, that's been addressed with the water truck being, utilized as much as possible, and brought up as a concern for sure. As far as the work starting, prior to that 7 a.m. on that, as Dean being suggested that, if they can do the greasing up of their machines and kind of working a little bit away from as close to the houses as they can earlier in the early periods, certainly would be recommended, I guess, and suggested if they could. So that's been passed on by two or three different people, from myself, as well as our director of operations and our engineers. So hopefully that will be addressed slightly better. As far as the stockpile of dirt that's there, I mean, as indicated in the overall discussions with our engineers, there was talk about this stockpile being somewhat placed there. And there was talk about, perhaps it would be a Toboggan Hill to work into our recreational plans for the area. I know we're talking with our director of operations as recently as this afternoon. He's indicated that the pile that's there now is not going to be any higher than that, and perhaps would be lowered somewhat. They found a lower area just in the parts that they might utilize some dirt for there. But again, the plan is to have it contoured so that, as he put it, if you can't mow it with that riding lawnmower, then that's not good enough because it has to be for maintenance purposes. And they want to see it and all that kind of stuff, so it's not just a dust prairie pile sort of thing. It will be contoured and seeded to that aspect so it can be maintained. As far as further discussions, in terms of removal of that, if you didn't want it to be there, period, for whatever reason, obviously there would be a fair cost to that. I don't have a number, but it would be fairly large. Part of the stuff that is there is coal and shale and that type of stuff. But to dispose of that, appropriately wherever we can do it is extra expense as well. So some of that is being put there and then the clay put on top and then seeding on top of that. So, that would be like I said, if council wanted to totally, remove the pile, that would be something you'd have to determine in terms of the cost estimate to do that. I don't see that as necessarily an option. There was talk about in the letter, I think about a possible berm, some trees, some vegetation, that type of stuff to be put there. Again, would be some cost involved with that. So if council chose to want to do that moving forward, definitely could be. In talking with the engineers, they talked about a trembling aspen type tree, and berm, again, could be considered, but again, dollars. There's a fair bit of dollars, obviously, with this project as it is, and it was in plans from there. And as far as information-wise, whatever, obviously, we put out some now. Maybe it should have been out a tad earlier for sure. But, we have dealt with some other items recently from our sidewalk work coming up, that type of stuff. Trying to put that out as best we can with the staff we have. Yes, NP was not available, Gavin wasn't available for tonight to come and further discuss if there were any other questions. But certainly in future meetings, if we want to discuss further moving forward, certainly can be so.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Caldwell.
Thank you for that. I think we were okay with information on the main project, but I think that was an afterthought, that piece of the project, and so probably that's our biggest takeaway going forward with this one. I don't know that we haven't committed to any kind of plan. I don't know when you say contouring so that it can be cared for. and mowed. I don't know what that would look like in terms of a toboggan hill, but we have had those conversations, but we always knew that the funding that we received, that 90-10 funding, was for the, the public utility, sort of that facility, right? We knew that we were going to have extra dollars that went into that project for all of the extra landscaping and for the recreation components. So I think it's important that we have community engagement before we sort of decide that we're going to have a toboggan hill right there. I know we've also had conversations in the past about if we had that business industrial area, that we want to be able to have a nice berm. So that dirt might be suitable for that kind of a project, right? But we also knew that this project was going to last for a good couple of years. It's a massive undertaking, and it would be incredibly, the cost would be prohibitive to us if we had to pay for all the hauling away all the dirt and everything. So, we chose, I think we chose a really smart path. But yeah, the communication piece and sort of that ongoing would have been important. But yeah, I think, sorry, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think it's important that we just keep in mind that we knew we were going to put extra money in there for recreation, and we know that we need to have community engagement before we finalize those decisions, right? Is that kind of what our conversations have been?
Think about it, and certainly, I mean, as far as, recreational areas we discussed not too long ago, I mean, whether it's moving some of the disc golf stuff there to Montague Dog Park, to Logging Hill, to whatever else we really want to put there, I mean, we did discuss that, obviously there would be some, first of all, council engagement for sure, but obviously community engagement as well. This is what our plans kind of are, and obviously even things like the RV dump station that we chose to postpone for the moment. We've talked about, briefly, maybe another social type area type thing down there as well. Obviously further walking paths other than just around the actual pond. I do know that in talking again with my director of operations, the Lafarge sort of enhancement kind of, was a little different than maybe what we thought initially was going to take place there too, which has resulted maybe in a little more displacement of dirt than even we thought. But again, as you indicated, definitely a berm we talked about if we did look at some industrial type lots in the future. And it's dirt, I mean, it can be moved, it's there. Obviously, even digging the main hole, we tried to get away with, as little as we could in that cost by having the contractors do that and utilize it for other projects and get rid of that big pile that was there, so.
Can I ask, please just be careful in our language, it's not industrial at all. It's business industrial, okay?
Business
Vastly
industrial,
different.
Right. So, yeah, business industrial, so.
And I'm wondering if you just had a number off the top of your head, if you remember the savings that we realized by allowing the developer to take the soil away as needed.
Well, ranges anywhere from half to over $1 million.
Yeah, so that was our savings, and that was our share of the 10%, right? That entered into that component?
Yeah, potentially, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so we realized that kind of savings by drawing this over a couple of years.
Go ahead, Councilor Klein.
No, I was just gonna say, I do really appreciate the information that was put out, kind of during, after, the project started. I think that it's something definitely a learning curve, as indicated, but moving forward, I think we should be much more proactive in our communication to residents, including, like mail drop-offs for specific residents, that are affected by the project, social media information leading back to the website. I really believe that, our residents are happy and pleased with the projects and growth in town. They just want to be informed. And so it's something we all want. And so if the information is readily available and chewable, we can probably minimize complaints based on, a perceived lack of information by putting some more stuff out and doing a better job of informing our residents of things happening in town. Just, I guess really briefly, it kind of lends a little bit to what we're talking about in the policy bylaw with the need for the formal process for complaints. And that's something that we're continuing to work on. But I think it's something that we need to maybe spend more time and effort on. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Cummings, I saw your hand there.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments on this one. I think just one comment that I have is using name locations like the Lafarge section. That can be a little bit confusing to people that are maybe new to town and don't know what's going on. I think it would be better if we could reference things maybe using apps or locations, because with the Lafarge location too, they might be thinking that it's Lafarge refuse or whatever from that, right? So it might lead to a little bit of misinformation there. I would like going forward to see a little bit more of the scope for what the phases of these major projects are. I know that we had approved this one based on a meeting, but it seems to me maybe I missed kind of what the full scope of this was during that meeting. And it would be nice to have that so we can understand that, so we know what we're approving and make sure that we're all on board with it. Talk about the tobogganing hill, it's one of those things that we kind of briefly discussed, but we never really finalized or anything like that. And it appears to be in the scope for what they're doing. So I think we got to be a little bit more proactive in that and kind of fleshing out some of those details a little bit ahead of time. And as Councillor Florence mentioned, I think communication is something that we can maybe learn a little bit from in this situation and be a little bit more proactive. I know with the first phase of this project, there was a lot of questions of what's going on and where's that dirt pile coming from, and it seems like the same thing happened with phase 2. So it's like for future projects or things, I would love to see better communication ahead of time, informing people so that we can answer those questions before they're even asked.
So I just have a couple of questions. So you had indicated that there is that coal there in that pile. Is that safe? Like, I don't know anything, but like, I know we did the survey, we did the communication or whatever. Is the way that this is being handled, is this considered safe?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think from what I understand in discussions I've had, which are not, not that extensive, but it was said that we do not want to run into a situation such as in the property behind the elementary school from a few years back, where basically the coal dust was, blowing and affecting properties or whatever. So by, burying it deep enough and placing, this clay and cement stuff on top, would make sure that that did not happen. In that sense, it's not close to the surface at that rate. So, so from my understanding, it's safer than what it is, say, on the property behind the elementary school was.
The other question that I had, so when we look at like the photos that were given to us, like where that pile actually is, my understanding is that's all going to be like landscape at the end of the day, right? So essentially it's a park. It's a green space that's behind the homes. Is that correct? Or is that just my assumption right now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I would say somewhat assumption,
Okay.
because as Deputy Mayor Caldwell indicated, we've had discussions as to what to do with that. A few years back, and obviously we built a satellite shop there as well, storage shed. And basically we talked about, obviously enhancing the pond area there because it is a part of our stormwater drainage. So even anything that comes down 55th and into there, the way it worked now is such that it would go into that pond, seep across the road into the county so-called lift station, then kind of go down 223 and get pumped once it came to a hill down when we got the major storm events. So by having it now with an underground pipe to flow into the big main constructed wetland, it will definitely help with, overall stormwater coming from, the west side of town and sort of up in that area and deal with that. And as far as for the actual whole Lafarge area, for the sake of a better word for the moment, no real concrete plans have been said that this is what's going to happen there. There was we had a schematic rough drawing of some half-acre to acre lots proposed for there, but the cost at that time was, fairly expensive. But we've indicated recently that we may want to, bring that forward again, have a look at, and, maybe we can phase it in on the basis of some pre-sales or something to that effect, and we'll have it easier in that sense. As well as, like I say, whether it's, some other recreational aspects. But the key thing is, this pond as well will be not maybe as featured as the main constructed wetland, but it, will be somewhat a natural area to extend. So.
But basically, at the end of the day, like, we're not gonna just leave this in a heap, and it's not gonna look the way it looks right now. Like, we're just in construction phase.
Yeah, let's say it will be contoured
Yes.
better than, like I say, sodded,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera. And like I say, at a slope that, as Kevin put it, that's absolutely, what to deal with it accordingly. So.
Okay. So just based off of this, like, I think that we've kind of heard that we need to do some engagement around like what does that space need to look like? And I think that when I'm looking at this, like this last question that we received in the letter here about what's going to happen with that pile of dirt, I kind of wonder, like, the response back to these residents along the lines of, like, we don't know because we want to engage people, but we also want to, like, just assure them that it will be left in a much better state than it is right now, I suppose. Because I do think it is really important that we acknowledge, you know, the questions that they have, but also to do that engagement so that we are all on the same page as to what this will look like, and even getting some of their feedback as well about that. But that's my thought on this. And then I was also thinking just too, and I think that this has kind of been mentioned, that when we have large projects like this, or if there's anything happening, I think we need to really create a process in terms of notification. You know, whether it's we always do mail drops or letters in the doors, or we like just a realm of pieces of communication that kind of go along with this. I think it was really great what Mike was able to pull together for us and how he was able to support this while you were on vacation. And I really appreciate that. I think that that information was really, really great to have it out there to be able to better explain what the meeting project was, I suppose.
Thank you. Just something, a little bit of a side note, somebody sent me a message saying they could really hear, so can we move the mic or something like that, maybe more central? Thank you.
It's on, so it's usually.
So do you feel that like you have enough to then to respond back to these residents?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, as you indicated, what the Director of Corporate Services passed on, and some of his emails did address a lot of these things already, of which, you know, this individual was part of, you know, the individual that was talking about the 4 or 5 of them that were involved in there. So I do think that most of these questions have been answered already, other than a quick email further to maybe say, in terms of, like say, just to reiterate that the final plans for the pile, final plans for the area, and that type of stuff will have not been completed by council, and obviously would involve, you know, definitely some public, you know, engagement in that process as we move forward. So.
That would be great. Just for clarification too, we're looking at, like, is this with the Lafarge component of this, will it also be like landscaped next year, similar to like the wetlands would be? Because we were talking about the wetlands having trees and grass next year, right?
Yeah, the vegetation
Yeah.
will be till next year.
But we would be doing the same with the Lafarge component of this project as well at the same time?
Yeah, I'm not sure, there'll be some sort of vegetation placed around there, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Have you included that in our plan? I didn't know if we had, actually.
Not a whole bunch of trees or whatever for that fact, but a little bit of, you know, your natural cattails, that type of stuff for sure would come as a result. But definitely again, something that we can further discuss with our engineers and have that as part of it as well.
And I guess, and I could be just, and I don't recall if this was conversations that happened back when this initially came up or with this council, but the idea was that front area was going to be a little more groomed, right? Where the large pond was, but then the back area, we were going to keep it just a little bit, not as groomed.
Yeah,
Right.
more natural.
Yeah, a lot more natural kind of a location,
Yeah.
that back area. Definitely not how it's looking, but
No,
we were going to keep it a little more natural in the front end. But I mean, I don't know if that was this council, and that is a conversation we'll have to have then, right?
I was under the same understanding. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just going to be a field of dirt. Right, like there was going to be something a little bit more to that. And that's why I was just wondering, because if we are looking at doing this in the spring or whenever that is, we just need to really like look at when are we going to do this actual engagement so that we can properly plan that in, because we're already in September, right?
Absolutely.
And so just looking kind of at the timelines as to how and when we can expect to be putting this out to the community, I suppose.
Yeah, but should we have that should we think of that ourselves first, what we would like to see in that area? In terms of what's a little more wilderness area, and where do we put, before we engage the community, or do we want to?
I think that we all at least need to be on the same page as to what we think it is,
Yeah.
right? Because it sounds like we have very different ideas as to what we currently think this is.
Yeah.
And then to maybe come forward with some suggestions and bring that to people to ask for some feedback and some additional ideas.
And then do the engagement piece, yeah.
But that's my thought anyways.
I
It just makes it
agree.
easier to start with something.
Because we also have to think about budgetary implications, right? So where are we going to invest the main body of the dollars and,
So maybe that could be something that's added to committee of the whole or something like that, where we can have a better discussion to get on the same page with where we're at.
and then, yeah, and see where we can put our big outdoor ninja gym.
There we go. All right, anything else on this item? Councilor Potri?
I can't help but think well, we could have avoided this obviously a number of ways. But when we put the dirt in that location, just with no plan, it's not good because it has more costs to move it now. And so it does kind of make us want to keep it there really, right? Because you're talking about costs and things, right? It's like, well, we could have our ninja gym or we could move a pile of dirt, right? It's like,
It's in the hundreds of thousands, probably, just to move dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why we realize that savings of between 500 to $1 million by having the developer, do that.
what I just can't do is I can't help but wonder why did we decide this was a location for Giant Hill in the first place, right?
Yeah,
Who made that decision, I guess?
put it in that spot as they were digging, because what they were doing is expanding that.
Because we could have had them dump it in a berm or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, you're right.
Who knows where, we could have had them dump it wherever.
Mhm.
And I guess, was there any kind of process,
Mhm.
or I guess I'd like to hear maybe the engineers, maybe they had a reason, it was just open space, I don't know, I really am wondering why that location was chosen. While the other one in the south was taken away, obviously, because that was good quality fill, this is not good quality, right, so it's not, can it be used, I guess, and that's question for administration, can it be used for other things? In terms of fill to other, farmers or whoever needs fill.
I think that, well, certainly the better clay for sure. I mean, there's some good portion of it that could be utilized for other purposes. I do know that, probably the engineer would answer it best, but I do know that in discussions with the engineers, there was talk about a stockpile somewhere off of the Lafarge area there. So whether it was right there, I'm not sure how, the exact, this was determined that this is the spot, but there was definitely talk about a pile somewhat to be stockpiled there for a reason, I guess, and but certainly, I guess, moving forward, we can have the engineers attend, and even in some of our discussions moving forward with future planning of what we may want to do there, if we say we'd like this there or that there, they may have some input into, this is or isn't a good spot due to other reasons as well, so. Because we have, done some environmental and that type of assessment on these properties, phase 1 and 2s, as well, so they do know where there are better areas to do certain things on the basis of those assessments that were done.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I do know that birds do appreciate the other side of a hill for wind shelter, so if nothing else, it provides good wind shelter for the birds.
But yeah, that's actually a very good question to ask.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different places that could have been put,
Absolutely.
places.
All right, any further discussion on this item? If none, we'll move on now to our internal report. So we have the financial report here. I'm just gonna open this up to any questions that anyone might have on the financial report.
No, there's no big jump outs.
Go ahead, Councilor Lawrence.
Sorry, I was have a few. I was just noticing that the significant changes between the two, and I was actually doing some comparisons. So I just have a few questions just for my own working it out. So on the administration page, we have revenue from our own sources and then other revenue transactions. So like, what are these sources? Because we used to have grants, revenue and reserves, is that kind of the same kind of thing, just different way of writing it? Or is it grants but not rentals, not including parks?
Yeah, definitely, any rentals like parks are under parks for rentals, community centers under community center for rentals. So conditional grants are obviously grants like MSI or anything to that effect that are put towards administration. Other revenue transactions involve things that aren't listed as, like tax certificates and compliance letters and those types of things, or sales of other services that might be there. So it's kind of another category for it. I'm not sure exactly what all fits into there right off the top, but it is just other revenue transactions that fit under administration.
Okay, thank you. And then just two questions about the expenses under admin. They're actually under a few because I think it's the new system too, but there's financial service charges and then other expenditure transactions again. So is that would just be kind of more, the expenditure would just be like regular stuff, but the financial service charges, that's a new one that hasn't previously been a line item.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, this is kind of a summarized version. If you were to look at it, this would be bank charges and that type of stuff that would be involved in there. I did talk about our Director of Corporate Services in terms of that because it is over budget, and it's to do with some, we had a grant scenario under other expenditure transactions that we got a little bit less than what we had anticipated due to the projects coming in a little bit under budget. So there was some way to write off what had been budgeted in there, so that makes up that 8,300. And the other finance charges deals with some other transactions that were kind of miscellaneous that are in and out, he said, with our sort of monthly service fees, and it kind of goes in and out, but it's not necessarily will end up at being 6,700. So.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about the emergency line too, like question, mostly just comments. We have a lot budgeted and we're getting into, kind of our final quarter here, and we aren't spending it. We have highlighted the need to invest in here. So maybe this is something that should be brought forward and talked about at the emergency advisory meeting. Just that, we can put in a little more oomph behind some of these plans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, with this one, I do have a meeting, hopefully this next week, looks like, with the Lethbridge County to hopefully get a little bit of an update on that regionalized emergency scenario. So it's been a long time coming over the summer or whatever. So that will hopefully help address where we're going with that. As well, we have our interim Dan that's been appointed, and he is at the present time doing some work on our emergency plan, which is good. So he's kind of bringing forward what our previous Dan had started and kind of working on the government website. And from there, once that's in place, then there would be a meeting of the advisory committee before it goes to the emergency, or to the administration committee before it goes to the council type committee with members at large on it, which then goes to council from there. So there's some work being done on in terms of the plan. And like I say, we're still waiting a little bit on that emergency regionalized approach. That's why there's some monies in here that have not been really utilized because we weren't sure what that might be for a year. So.
Okay, thank you. I just with on the Parks and Rec, there's under the expenses, the contracted services. I assume that's like mowing and stuff like that. And it's all been used for this year. Yeah, I'm curious, so like what tips the scale to have a contracted service versus public works, or what is this maybe something we need to look at and be a little bit more efficient, or budget a little bit more for this contract service, if it's something like that? Because at this point we're at like 100% of it. I know there's a little bit more or less on the variance. But yeah, that's one of the questions that I had.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, with that, I mean, a lot of that is dealing with our irrigation pumps and that type of stuff to water the areas. And we had some shingles and stuff like that, and some of the facilities in there, that type of stuff that was budgeted. So a lot of this, once you get out of season, there won't be the same expenses that are attributed towards parks. So it's kind of mainly in season that you have your sprinklers and your fixes and your repairs and your shutdowns and startups and that type of stuff. So, so what all fits under contracted? I mean, most of the stuff is done by Public Works in terms of the mowing of the grass and changing the sprinklers and looking after the, the facilities and that type of stuff. So But there are things like, you know, pumping out our RV station, those types of things that go into the contract, but obviously at this point is something that we do have to contract out in that regard, as well as, like, say, lifting our irrigation pumps and those types of things, so.
Okay, thank you. I had seen some guys mowing the other day in the ditches, and I was like, who are these guys? And so, yeah, it made me wonder about the contracting of the mowing too.
Mowing, ditches like,
Like right in town, like weed whacking, walking along, weed whacking. That's
it
it.
should only be our guys, so.
Oh,
I
well,
mean, unless you don't, you know, Skylar,
yeah, I think so.
he was one of our summer people that's still doing some work for us.
Yeah, I think I know who he is, because
He's on the fire department.
Right, yeah.
so He's, shorter fellow.
yeah, they were right by the, you know, when you go by Con Park, the elephant park in the back, that's where they were mowing. They were weed whacking the ditches there.
That's something to do with Modano Park, possibly around there, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. I was curious about it because I was under the impression that we didn't contract that out. And that's why the question for what tips the scale kind of came in.
No, our weed cutting and that type of stuff isn't contracted out, so. Other than the odd time we have, if there's some special spray for like, you know, babies for a few years ago, or, you know, some of the rougher areas, like when we did do behind the elementary school, it was a little bit rougher, we didn't have bigger mowers, we did contract out those kind of things, but right now, so pretty much our guys, so.
Okay. So just one last question while we're talking about contracting services, because it's something that, like, when we talk about creating policies and bylaws, would contracting that out to somebody to make the policies and bylaws be something that we would look at as a council? I know that when we're talking about creation of a lot of these new bylaws, we're looking at them bringing up new things, and I know that it is a burden on admin, or it takes time. So would that be something that we could, with policy bylaw, to look at some like comparative data and look at some costs for contracting things like that out, which might make it more efficient in of getting them done more quickly as well and not using up staff time and stuff like that. Is that something historically that's ever been done, or is that a service that people offer?
I'm sure it's a service.
We've done it in the past and we've done the comparisons, but we should keep doing it because, I mean, we've found in the past that it was more cost effective to go contract services for certain things. But as our town grows and as we know we need new public works, I think it's important we just keep doing it, right?
Are you talking more about like development of policies?
Policies, yeah, development of the policies and bylaws, and I know that when we go through.
I apologize, I thought you were talking about
Both.
services in general.
Yeah, no, both, I think it's a great idea. But specifically for the policies, like we talked about the formal complaint process, we talked about the community standards bylaw, there's been a lot of work done on the big one. The lead. No, it's the,
Community standards.
no, it's not that one either, it's one right at the front, it's, they just made it, like, it would just came into effect in like 2021. I can't remember. I don't think that's it, but these things, they take time, it takes like a year to get these things written, and I mean, some of these stuff that, you know, like, for instance, the complaint process, or you know, community standards, waiting for a year seems, and this is not, I hope I don't want the impression that it's already been a request at all, but it's something that we'd like to see maybe sooner, and so that's where the conversation of, you know, is there value in contracting it out, and if that's something that we look into, we bring it back to council and say, hey, there might be some value in this, and it'll free up some of that valuable admin time, you know, it's something that we can look at.
I think for that, like, I would love to see, like, you know, essentially we've said that these are the things that need to happen. And then going to administration and saying, how can you make this happen? And so if it comes back with a suggestion that we should contract it out, or, you know, maybe we need better staff, or whatever that might be, I think that would be great to kind of have that feedback. But I do agree with you that these things, they can't take a year, because that's too long.
Sorry, thank you, that was it for questions on the financial things for me.
Perfect. Is there any other questions? If there's none, can I get a motion to approve the internal reports?
I'll make that motion.
I move that
Okay.
the internal reports presented in this meeting are accepted.
Any further discussion? There's none. Question, all in favor? That's great, thank you. Okay, so now I'm gonna go down to the CAO report and ask if there's any questions on the CAO report. Okay, Councilor Harkins?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the solar energy project. I know that the last few updates are all talking about final commissioning and some training still in the works for that. I was curious, is there something that's kind of holding this up, or is there a way that we can press them to kind of move this along a little bit quicker? I just can't shake the feeling that we're leaving money on the table, especially with how sunny it's been the last couple months. So I'm just thinking if there's any way to kind of get that finished, flip the switch and get it going, that would be more beneficial, because it sounds like it's almost all the way done, and we're just losing money while it's not turned on.
My understanding is in the scenario is that mostly it's Fortis in terms of them finalizing their stuff and getting it into a place that it could be anywhere from, I'm hearing, 2 weeks to, months. So it's just a matter of, that's where the holdup is. And I know that, like I say, we've been meeting almost as indicated bi-weekly, towards that. The bi-directional meter was finally installed, which was a bit of a holdup. That's been installed, so now I'm not sure what the rest should be. We kind of completed even our grant requirements in terms of that MCCAC funding. So it should be close, but we can press a little bit of agency so we get it a little sooner than later.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to be kind of on them a little bit, and maybe just kind of wait the proverbial fire, so to speak, to kind of get them moving on it.
Any other questions for the CAO report? Good.
I as well. Just pulling this up. Did you have any kind of an update for us on the drainage issue in Sundance? Is that something that we can speak about publicly or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd say no at this point, but I will say that, we are trying to, again, push the issue a little bit in terms of there's been a little bit of back and forth, and it's the one where put a chicken and egg, if you want to call it. So we're kind of saying, well, let's get a final answer in regards to this, so that then we can come to council. We have kind of a plan that was proposed, I think it was presented to council a while back, somewhat a suggestion that was there. So it hasn't changed a bunch from there, other than sort of trying to figure out the costing and how much perhaps the other side is willing to pay. And then there was some talk about, moving the playground equipment, that type of stuff. So that's kind of where we're at now. It's like, what is the final thing that you're willing to do? And basically I'm saying the other side, so that then we can go to council and say, okay, here's the plan. Is council good with the plan? If they're good with the plan, and depending on the dollars you're willing to put into it, is that good enough, or do we basically, go to litigation and go from there? So I'm hoping that sooner, and I'm hoping in the next month to have something come to council in regards to that. So.
I'll just keep asking.
Go ahead.
Sure. Shauna, our temporary bylaw enforcement, is there a timeline when she wanted to be done? My understanding was she was returning to school, or?
Thank you, Madam. No, at this point, she works with that Northbridge Watch program in the city. So basically, she's indicated that she's available. For now, we have her scheduled all of September, at least, and she said she would kind of stay on until such time as we permanently get someone in place. So actually, for what it's worth, I think everybody's been fairly pleased with what she's done today. So it's nice to have, boots on the ground, if you want to call it, to some degree. I mean, it's not full time, but certainly she's little, but seems kind of mighty. So.
More questions? Good.
I was curious about I didn't see you mention in here about the strategic plan. Has that been, I guess, where's that at with strategic steps?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They will be here next Tuesday to present their draft. That's going to be done. So.
Do we have a copy of the draft?
I do have it, so it's, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Will we have that in advance to go
Oh, yeah.
over them? If I had my way, I'd like to see it right this moment, please, could you just email it to? That's.
Send it out to you tomorrow if you want.
We put a lot of work into this, we're really excited about it.
And then my other question was just about this NPE engineering dinner. We just wanted to know that, I suppose.
Yeah, thinking of it, yeah, I guess I was looking for, if we're interested, obviously, and then, just number of people, is there any spouses or anything to that effect, or guests that would be going, or just council members? And that's it, I guess. As you can see, ATCO is looking at a Tuesday dinner, which is confirmed, and then MP is looking at a Thursday dinner, Wednesday is hospitality suites. In greater detail on Thursdays.
So it's a resounding yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I will be by myself.
Yeah.
So, one last question from my end, if I could.
Sure.
Okay, our municipal asset management program. So the grant that we wrote, I think that's super lovely, but I'm curious, so a master plan for asset evaluation and planning purposes. Transportation master plan study. Can you just unpack that a little bit for me for asset evaluation? I'm just curious what that would look like for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, basically, in simple terms, it is a transportation master plan study, but the purpose of this is, as indicated, they would assess the condition of all the roads and all the sidewalks with this machine that they drive over, and it assesses, from the base to the actual top surface or whatever. Puts in, will come up with kind of an estimated cost value for it, the timelines for it, and then sort of fits into the so-called overall capital, 5-year capital planning or longer capital planning. So that's the purpose of this. And it would deal specifically with these items like roads and sidewalks or whatever, but
That's fantastic.
hopefully the one grant, there's 2 grant possibilities. There's this one, and then if not this one, then we look under the DCP one is the other possibility. So we said that we kind of hope for this one for the moment. It's basically a massive process to get to the point of even where we're at. We've been told, well, hey, you made it by this step, you made it by this step. And hopefully in 6 weeks, you'll get to the next step sort of thing. But that's what we'll end up with if and when we get it done.
What a great tool for us. That's fantastic.
Councilor.
Thank you. Yeah, so we had to discuss that, and brought forward a recommendation from the risk management committee. Are you on that one, right, Steph? Yeah, and brought that to council. It is a really cool thing that they're doing because, looking at that and, being able to look at that data and then from that do the 5-year capital planning, is I think really cool. And then from that also some of the smaller projects and even what's happening with the sidewalk replacement, is the smaller projects that, we decided to go ahead with this year because they absolutely need to be done. But, to get that assessment done and try to get the grant covered in order to get those, that for the 5-year plan. So I'm really happy to hear that it's at that point and hopefully it gets approved.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, is this the grant that would cover the majority of the funding, or is it the one that I believe was like 80%?
This one is 80%. Yeah, so it was $62,000, and this would give us 50 or something, so.
Great. Any other questions on the CAO report? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for your council, I guess. Number 5, in terms of the light fixtures and the bridge for the wetland, are you good with black, or I think that was the discussion at the time, but I think we just wanted to confirm that.
I think that makes sense. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one other item, I just got it this afternoon later. The county has extended an invitation. They're hosting a Kairos blanket exercise on Wednesday, September 28th, and are extending an invitation to council or administration. They say they have 7 spots available. That's sort of obviously first come, first served. It'll take place September 28th, 1:30 at the Diamond City Community Hall. If anyone's interested in that. It'll be led by Elder Wendy English, Blackfoot Elder.
I would like to go to that.
I'm not available.
Available. Would you like to?
No, I actually, the town of Culver hosted one a few years ago, and I had a chance to take part in it. It was a really, like, moving exercise, quite frankly. I would encourage anybody who has a chance, to go. Very cool. And I think that, even joining in with the county is, you know, a nice thing to do. I guess, would there be anybody from administration that would like to take it in, or is that?
I was at the one that you indicated that time too, so.
I would actually like to take part, and I did take part in one with Culvers, but I think it's a really great bonding opportunity for county council, because you do get a little bit raw there, right? Is that Wendy Calkin who's coordinating that? Wendy Calkin, I think she sits on the library board, but she's our local Kairos
I
person.
don't see her name, I just came from Candace, the executive assistant, to the CAO, but it just said that Wendy English left out for the one, leading it.
I'm sorry, you said that was at
1:30,
1:30 in Diamond City.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
so I don't think you need a motion to have a couple people attend, so you may want to do that as well.
I'll make that motion. Great. I move that, the mayor and the deputy mayor are authorized to attend the Kairos blanket exercise with the county on September 27th at 1:30.
Any discussion? All in favor? And it's carried. Was it the 27th or 28th?
Oh,
28.
Okay, sorry. Show up the wrong day. Good, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just one other point, you did notice that our offer to the county regarding the parcel area was accepted. So it was subject to us doing a geo or some sort of testing on there, so we will arrange for that. They are arranging for the transfer of title, et cetera, so
Was it our first offer?
it was our first offer, so that's all I'm saying.
That's great.
It was more by
Exciting.
habit.
So, sorry, can I just ask, or I guess maybe this isn't good, but what would be the next steps then with that parcel?
Well, next step, thank you, Mayor, I'll talk to Diane, and we'll look at, working on a subdivision proposal for that, because, it's 5 acres, so potentially I think we would look at half to acre, probably acre sort of parcels, potentially, and kind of a little structure through it or whatever, that's in order that we can sell off, unless somebody wants to buy the full 5 acres, but I think we'd, probably the way I understood the discussion was more or less that we would look at sort of having some parcels available, whether it's 3 or 4, depending on some scenario through there, so, because that's the next process, and it does take a little bit of time, but, we'll work with that in terms of that, so.
What about the geotech? Are we responsible for that coordination?
We did in our discussions, we sort of said, depending on how the offers went,
Yeah.
we would pay or they would pay sort of thing, so at this point, it's a we would pay, but it's not gonna be done, I'd say 5 to not more than $10,000 expense. So anyways, I just want to say that, so.
Perfect. Okay, can we move to the director of operations report? Same thing, if there's anything that anyone has questions on or would like to discuss? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just in regards to number 1, our stolen trucks or whatever, as it turns out, one of our stolen trucks was written off. So basically, we do have a check coming for the value of what they feel it was worth. So we are in the process of trying to locate another similar type truck, in that price range. Probably a few dollars more, but hopefully not too many dollars more. The second one was not written off, but does have a fair bit of damage, and we haven't given authorization to, and Kevin has ordered, or basically talked to Dunlop Ford to get the parts, and once it's in, get it fixed up. We are in the interim dealing with, we've had a couple of rental vehicles, which were part of the insurance scenario as well up to date. Some of them now at a point, we will pay a little bit, but it's not super expensive in the interim for one. And some of the other damages for the gate, the shop doors, and that type of stuff. We've also submitted all the information for that and have a check coming for that as well. So it's worked out, relatively well, other than being on a couple of trucks, I guess.
Alright. Other questions Councilor Florence.
I have a question and a comment. I just looking at the point about the garbage truck here and fixing the old one. I was curious about the new garbage truck and the efficiency, and maybe we could get some information in a future report on the data on how the new truck does compare to the old truck, how it's saving residents money, that kind of thing. It's one of our largest capital purchases this year, and I think it would be cool to have access to that information and pass it on to our ratepayers. And then I also wanted to say I had lead testing done at my house the other day from the town, and I thought it was very cool the way they came and did it and how they shared that information. So I haven't done it yet, but I'm looking forward to, like, you get a letter that says, yeah, and it was really cool. I was happy to have testing done at my house, but I just thought the process was really cool, and actually really cool how that information is shared back. And so I just wanted to pass on kudos because that was great.
Anything else with this item? If there's none, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the report?
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I move that the chief administrative officer's report is hereby accepted as presented.
any further discussion? Ms. Dunn, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Right, so now we'll move on to council member reports or questions. I'll start with Councilor Potry today.
It's my first time being first, I think.
There we go.
I've been meeting for a while here. I attended the agriculture meeting and of course the wonderful Miners Days, which I think Greg was wonderful. And everything that day was really good. It was a really good event. And I also attended the webinar on the National Police Perspective, which was not as informative as I thought it was going to be. And a few of us were chatting about that, and it was, we didn't know what we were expecting. And then just last week I attended the ORSC meeting where they presented a new kind of service offering called MLUST, which is the Municipal Land Use Sustainability Tool. And it's what it is it's kind of like a visioning session for, maybe not a visioning, but it's kind of like, it kind of is like a value management for your land use. So the example they shared, and I can share this with you if you're interested, was in Crow's Nest Pass, how they looked at all the land in that whole area and say, what areas are most suitable for residential? And they kind of go through these, they were like looking at, residential, commercial, industrial, and industry, and what areas kind of most suitable for each of those. And you can see some areas based on their analysis, they came up with this map and it showed, the best areas for residential and the best areas for industrial and so on, right? So what they do is a process where they take all your information and whoever's participating in the workshop, and then they put it together and run this kind of analysis on it. So they produce these maps. And of course, it's not that complicated compared to Crow's Pass. I don't know if we really need an analysis on there, but it was an interesting tool. They said you can actually analyze really any target metric you wanted. If you want to say, well, where's the best place for business hub, you could have them do an analysis on it, kind of thing. So.
What kind of stuff do they measure? Like, what would they take into account, like location or like closeness to major roadways?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff from Crow's Nest Pass was about avoiding conflicts. So riparian areas, creeks, rivers, right? We don't want to touch those. And there was like, you can't just think of historical significance like Frank Slide, you didn't want to touch that. So they would, and then depending on the use, you'd have houses that were maybe, next to it, but then heavy industrial, you want it really far away kind of thing. So that was the kind of stuff they were looking at. And then they have a lot of crown land out there too, also that's useful for houses. And so, yeah, so it was, I was interested in it. I don't think a lot of other people were. I just see it as an interesting tool for analyzing these things and then giving a rationale as to why do we pick that spot for, a business hub or whatever, right? But then it also makes you think, well, maybe this spot is ideal for residential, it's all ideal for business, it's good for industrial. But then we don't have other lands that are available for industrial, so really we need to prioritize it in this location, for example, right? We can't, if there's competing ones, cut or flap, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that would be like incredibly valuable tool to use, especially for Forest. Like, when we talk about like data-driven stuff and making good decisions and having, you know, the stats to make good decisions, I think that's so important, so, and that's like super innovative and awesome, quite frankly.
That's brand new, this process.
Very cool.
I'm sure that Diane can give us.
All right, is that your report?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
Great. Jenny Mercado.
Thank you. I attended the, as well, the Rec Culture and the Miners Day events and parade. I have to say that I stepped up to assist to organize the parade, and it was a very intimidating process. My hat's off to everybody who's done it in the past, Deb. And but in the end, what an amazing and satisfying experience, and I'm just so delighted that it turned out so well. I'm excited for next year, and I know next year we're going to have a children's piece of it. We're going to have a section that's specific for children to decorate their bikes, and it's a little girl with a goat, and the little cart with the mini horse with the little, you know, I mean, all of that stuff was absolutely what made everybody just fall in love with that whole parade, right? So anyway, so I'm putting that on the table for next year. We're going to do some hell of a planning, okay, for children in our parade, okay? Anyways, next item. Okay, it was so fun. The next item as well is I attended the policing key messages as well, and I felt a similar disappointment. I thought there should be more engagement, so I was really happy to hear about Mayor Montina's experience. And then did I mention MSBA as well as the review parade? And that was it. That was it.
Thank you. Councilor Evans.
Like the others, I attended that policing webinar. My comments on that are, it seems like no matter who's presenting, it's very, very, very one-sided and very strong opinions for their stance, right? So it's kind of like, where do you find that happy medium? Beyond that, I got to spend a lovely evening with the mayor, cutting the float for Miners Days, and then had the parade and party in Park for Miners Days, which was an absolute blast. I thought that's great. There's lots of smiling faces in the community and really good feedback. At Party in the Park, somebody was saying they were in from Ontario and they wish that they had events like this in their community. So I think hats off to everyone that helped out with that. That was awesome.
That whole small town approach,
And then I had the Southborough executive meeting on the 29th, and it's kind of business as usual, but they are going after one grant that will allow for trees to be planted in member communities. So if we can get that, I don't know the exact breakdown, but it would work out to approximately 11 per community, but I don't know if we're gonna go to every community or what, but there might be an opportunity to get some trees for the new project or around town. So definitely be pushing for some of those to be planted in our community. I think that was it for my events. I just had one question regarding one of the previous motions with regards to the town app. I know we had looked at the cancellation of the contract for the town app and a plan to upgrade and it says that to prepare a plan to upgrade the town website and other means of communication. So I was just kind of curious where we were at on any sort of plan to upgrade the town website, and I was hoping that we would be able to get some usage statistics on that town app, because if it's not being used, I think that it might make sense to cancel that at this time.
Mayor, that individual SMB apps will be next Tuesday as well.
Is there anything else for your report?
No.
That's it. Okay. Councilor Flores.
Thank you. I have been to a few parades as well this summer. It's an absolute honor to represent the town of Colhurst. Of course, my favorite parade is at home in Colhurst. as mentioned, it's an absolutely outstanding parade. It was an absolutely fabulous weekend event overall. It's hats off to all the hardworking folks who made it happen. It was really, really nice. So it was good to be home. And I think we're gonna get put on the map as a candy parade. That was pretty good. Lots of comments about that. So very, very nice. I also had a chance to attend the policing webinar. I will agree with the rest of council that there wasn't a lot of engagement. I take the opposition a little bit. I think the information in the webinar was good. And I enjoyed listening to the perspectives, especially the folks who had spent their careers in that and kind of enjoyed listening to their take on it. The way the webinars are with the, like I think the next one is it's an author or something. I like how it's just people bringing information. So it's not necessarily like we have all the answers, but it's like, here's some information, here's my take on it. So I thought it was, the engagement was poor, very poor. In fact, I kept being like, where's the chat box? Like, am I missing it? But it turns out I was missing it because it wasn't there. And so, definitely interesting to see where this keeps going. I know this is like the 8th time in our agenda, even tonight that we've talked about it. So certainly interesting. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is just the the way people stepped up this weekend and helped, and I really think that that's inspiring, and I think it's going to inspire more people to get involved and to help out, and I really think that people stepping in and doing the work of a society is we're on the right track, and it was really cool to be part of that, and it lit my fire, and I hope that other people were feeling that way too. So.
Thank you. I'm going to echo most of what everybody has said, with a couple of parades, the policing webinar, the meeting that I had with the minister. I do have to say that meeting that we had, that short meeting that we had to develop our policing key messages, I found that to be very, very helpful in terms of representing our stance to the minister. But also just, I think, get that whole idea of getting on the same page with all this information that's continually coming our way. And so I would love for us to continue to do those types of things when it comes to these, so that I can make sure that I'm accurately representing our council as a whole. And then the other thing too, I just echo everything that's been said about Miners Days. It was a lot of fun. It was a long day, but it was really, really great. And from pancake breakfast all the way to the movie that was held in the community center at the end of the day. It was really great, and all the volunteers that were there and people that did all the work that they did, I think that it came together really, really nicely this year. And I'm excited for the kids part of the parade next year. That'll be cool. So just a big congratulations to everybody, and thank you to our community for really owning that and taking part in it this year. I think that was fantastic. And I think that's kind of it. So that's, I think, what I've been doing up to this point. And so now's the fall, and we're right back into it, so it should be good. All right, so we'll just move on to the next item here, which is our external reports. And so we have the Southborough Regional Initiative Rural Immigration Stream Workshop. And so is there anybody that would be interested in attending this?
I'm not sure at this point, do we have enough business that we need to try to seek out, lawyers? I mean, I think it's wonderful information there.
Absolutely.
I'm trying out that day, but I believe it's just talking about kind of like the pilot project that's going on here, where they're bringing in immigrants to fill some of the needs for job vacancies within the community, and then not only helping them with finding work, but supporting them once they're here. So I know when Councillor Caldwell was mentioning, I don't know if this would be relevant for our situation, probably be good knowledge, but a little bit beyond where we're at the moment.
All right, if there's nobody that's interested in going, then we'll just move on to, can somebody make a motion to accept the external report? Councillor?
I move that the external reports presented in this meeting are accepted.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Okay, so with our correspondence, we've got a lot here. I don't know if there's anything within here where there's any actual action items. I don't believe that there is. These are more just important information, unless I'm wrong. So in saying that, I'm going to make a motion to acknowledge the correspondence as presented in this meeting. It's acknowledged and filed, but then I'll just open it up for discussion if there's anything on this list that anyone would like to chat about.
I was wondering if we had, there's the QE2 Platinum Jubilee Medal, which we could provide recognition for somebody. I believe is the intention for that, right?
Is there anyone specific that you have in mind?
Well, you get one already, Lindsay, so. This is all the mayor's get one.
That's like my thing. I didn't know that.
Good thing I read this.
Good thing.
So it's what I read it.
Well, it better be in there. Yeah, do we have anyone that we would like to nominate at this point?
Significant contributors, yeah, I don't know, I just thought I'd try to bring it up in case anybody else, I don't have somebody, I don't have a particular person in mind right now. They want somebody, just looking around here, sorry. Has made significant contributions to Canada or a region of Alberta, a community, the professional field, several areas of significant contributions. Could be COVID-19, truth and reconciliation, diversity, including preservation of the environment. They should be a leader of the community and be in good standing with the long community, so.
Is this something that happens every year? Or is it?
Happened a few years ago, I think, and I don't know, like forward meeting. That's what I.
Oh, because it's for the platinum
It's just
jubilee.
second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, Madam Mayor, not to say that it has to be for this, I was gonna mention in my CEO report, I don't know if council is aware or not, Rosemary Roth had officially resigned at the high school after 49 years. So I'm not sure whether, I know in the past we had a couple of teachers that retired after some long time. Arlene Purcell was one, I forget the name of the other one. The council had presented a plaque to of some sort, so I'm not sure whether Rosemary would fit that category for a plaque. I'm not certainly suggesting for the QE2 necessarily, but I just thought of that and I was really thinking about that. That was something I was going to mention tonight. So.
Yeah, I think that would be lovely to do that. I'd really like to see us like even with this, and I think that this is part of like that whole community services division that we talked about, is to be more proactive, I guess, in terms of these things, and to really know who the people are, like, you know, and to have this as part of a program too, and even like you're talking about with like the plaque and things like that, just so that we're not missing people too, because I do really feel bad about that, that if you don't personally know somebody, and as the community is growing, there's a strong likelihood that we're probably going to be missing people that might be doing something really great.
You know, actually, Rosemary Roth wouldn't be a bad nominee for this QE2. I mean, she's had a huge impact in all of our youth for 49 years. She hasn't just sat behind a desk being administration there. And she's coordinated the awards. She's really built that whole roster up for people to come in and giving different sculpture awards to the kids. So, I mean, that's pretty big. You know, plus the hundreds of thousands of bandages and words of advice.
So with this, if we'd like to nominate her, is that something that usually the administration would actually do, or is that something that council takes upon?
Well, I guess depending on, there is a bit of a write-up that you have to do for this, so I need somebody or some assistance unless, I don't know.
Probably get that information from the school. Somebody would be delighted to write something up for her.
Definitely touch base with the principal or somebody there, I guess, and see
I think that would be great.
what the thoughts were.
It's a nice looking medal.
Sorry?
It's a nice looking medal.
Yeah, and then I don't know whether, like whether you still wanted to do like a plaque from council to present to the committee of the whole or some situation.
I think that would be nice to do that as well. All right, is there any other items on the correspondence? Anyone would like to talk about?
Does they need a resolution for that?
I don't believe so. We could,
I don't think that, I think I'll look at the form.
Unfortunately, I can't get the online form.
Yeah, I don't, I looked at it
I'm
pretty
trying to
sure.
click to get onto it.
I know, because I would imagine that anyone could submit this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, if there's nothing else for correspondence, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. All right, so now let's move on to other business. The first one that we have here is Lethbridge County's Development Permit Application 2022-148. CEO, I'm just gonna turn that over to you.
Okay, Mayor, so again, they sort of want to comments by September 2nd, but in looking at it, obviously I had our development officer look at it, and basically all they're looking at is some outdoor storage of the headwater scenario, which again, didn't seem to have any major impacts in that sense, so. So with that, I guess, if we wanted to pass a resolution and forward the information, even if it's after the fact, for what it's worth, and go from there. And that's all I'm saying.
We just set the recommendation and if our development.
Yeah, we'll just send a more standard resolution that's there, that's no concern.
So I'm gonna take that motion. Okay, sports policy.
Yep, I move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby authorize CAO Howder to submit a letter to Lethbridge County indicating that the town has no concern with development permit number 2022-148 outdoor storage at the location of plan 9711954, lot 3, as presented in August 18th, 2022 application.
Great.
That's another.
Those are always the worst. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Just to get those plans in our package, I don't seem to be able to like read the text for the images that are included. So,
They weren't very bright even in the original thing and very small, so.
okay. So, have you had, okay, right.
Do you have anything else for that?
I guess I don't have concerns, I can't read.
Great.
How can I have concerns? I don't know what they're doing, so.
That's mildly concerning, and it's that you have no idea what they're doing over there.
I see a gray box, the building gray box of gravel or something, I don't know.
Sorry, I was just reading the information around it on the form and stuff. You're right, it's not legible.
And I guess as our development officer's comments there, and obviously being with the county previously or whatever, weighed in if there didn't seem to be any major issues with it, so.
All right,
So
so
that's what we're gonna have to rely on.
call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. Okay, the next item that we have is the Justice and Solicitor General policing webinar, the next installment of that, and it is happening on September 9th. Is there anyone that would like to attend that?
I'm not available, I would love to attend, but cannot.
I would like to attend it. Is there anyone else?
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's this weekend.
It's a Saturday, and do you think it'll have a different flavor after the community engagement stuff? Well, let's see.
I guess we'll find out, thanks.
Yeah.
It says they're accepting questions. Q&A session.
I can make that one.
Great, thank you.
I move that Mayor Montina and Deputy Mayor Caldwell are hereby authorized to attend the Futures of Alberta Policing, a webinar series on September 9th, 2022. Councilor Boucher, did you want to go too, or?
Yeah, actually,
Okay, and yeah, Councilor Boucher to that as well. I'm tired of that date as well, so.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, the next item that we have here is, Minister Shandro has put out, some times for potential meeting, while we're at Alberta municipalities, I believe. And I guess it's a matter of did we want to meet with them? We did just have that meeting. I'm not sure if there's other things that you would like to reflect at that meeting. But go ahead.
Think about it, this is actually after.
Oh, is it?
Municipalities, and it's sort of 50-minute sessions with, select attendees or whatever, so if you look at, so September 27th, and then there's 6 time slots available in the day with various municipalities, but up to 20 at a time. So just looking for maximum 2 per municipality if you're interested.
Sorry, that was my, I just made an assumption because he had said that he was gonna do this there. So I was like, oh, I know about this, I'm not gonna read this. So apologies.
So it says focus dialogue on the topic of provincial policing as well as any other justice and public safety topic important to municipal leaders.
I think it would be good, like if we can have some representatives go, because just as things are progressing, to kind of keep with it, because who knows what will have come up by this point, right? Like we're talking the end of the month.
Absolutely.
So he's in Lethbridge on the 27th.
I'm available for that meeting. I need to work. I can work this one, so.
I am available as well. So I guess it's just a matter of what sessions are even available probably at this point. So I have availability all day, so I can go to any session.
I can make that work too.
Do you want me to make that motion?
Yes, I move that we, Council Tumblers, hereby authorizes to attend the municipal engagement road training with Mr. Travis Shamrock and Lethbridge, which is September 27th, 2022.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? This one, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Okay, so the next item here is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Within our package, we do have the recommendation that we observe the day and close all town facilities and lower the flags at half-mast, as well as make an amendment. I will make this motion, so I move it to council of the town of Colhurst. That's okay. I was like, hereby observe the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th, 2022, and close all town facilities and lower flags to half-mast. Further, that policy number 99-01-07, holidays be amended to include national days for truth and reconciliation. Any discussion? Okay.
When it says, when we say all town facilities, are we talking like the shop and the office, or are we talking like community center as well?
I think shopping in the office is what we're talking, I mean, if there's working in the hall, I mean, that would still be fine.
Thanks.
I just had a question about the protocol for lowering flags. I was trying to read on it today, and I couldn't find it. And I was reading on what the protocol for lowering flag was, and I was just it's just an interesting gesture to me. But I just wanted to make sure that in fact like the right flag protocol was being followed. But yeah, I definitely want to support this motion. I also think with this motion we should put out a public statement similar to what we've done in the past with other days, just like a quick message to follow.
I guess that is a good question. With the flags being lowered to half-mast, is that something that is following protocol in terms of this? I don't know if that's just in general.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, basically, a year ago when this sort of was put into place, I mean, it suggested that flags be flown over the bigger cities, and even this year, when I could see Edmonton and Calgary for sure were flying half-mast. Even situations like we do have a policy in our policy manual in terms of when we lower our flags or don't, well, basically when we do. We did lower them today in terms of the Saskatchewan stabbing scenarios that occurred there. I did get a notification from the province saying that government, legislature and government facilities and that type of stuff were lowering theirs. So on that basis, we did. And generally, if there is other scenarios to that effect, we do get a notification from the province to do that. So I haven't received anything in terms of this, but I do know a year ago that was a recommendation. We also will fly an orange flag that day as well, the Wilkie flag. as well. Public Works is aware of that, perhaps at the start of the week, just for that, we talked about it, so. So, yeah, I think protocol was last year to do that, so.
Go ahead.
And sorry, I maybe double this, but in our policy, holiday policy, do we have a differentiation between paid holidays and unpaid holidays? Or are they all holidays, paid holidays?
Like, Madam Mayor, the ones that are listed in the policy are considered as paid stat holidays.
Okay. So we don't have non-paid holidays.
No, that's why, I mean, we do have like Easter Monday, which is kind of a different one per se, Boxing Day, that's really not necessarily stat holidays, but they are something.
Heritage Day.
That's what, yeah, well, Heritage Day is, yeah, is a civic holiday, it's a stat holiday, probably.
It's not paid though, you don't have to pay.
You would?
Heritage Day, you don't have to pay.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. No? You don't want to leave this one?
I thought it was.
It's always been around for official. Anyways, these are, yeah.
Yeah,
the
you
ones
off, you
that-
don't have to pay.
Oh, okay.
These are listed as stat holidays and paid, I guess. Because it does say, what holidays will be observed by town employees, days off of pay.
Sorry, I was just gonna, I'm just looking, so there's been 2 days off in September, which is, I guess fine, but maybe instead of just making the amendment, should you refer to the policy bylaw for further discussion, or just go ahead and make the amendment as it? Like, so there'll be September 5th, which is
Yeah.
Labor Day, and then the 30th.
Yeah.
And so that's, I mean,
My thought is that, like, I'm comfortable doing this. I think that this is kind of happening across the board at this point, from what I'm seeing anyways. And so I'm not sure that this one needs to go to policy bylaw, in my mind.
But at some point, we might have to. Do you know what I'm saying? Is it better to do it ahead of time, or is it better to do it another time later down the road? Because I agree that this is an important day. We're just rolling days as they come into a policy that gives paid time off. And I don't know when the last time it's been visited and looked at, say, I mean, do we just continue to roll everything into that policy, or do we have a policy bylaw review that, to just take a look and say, are we on track? Are we, is our practice consistent with what other municipalities are doing? Are we just kind of doing it because that's what we've always done?
And I guess that's a question for me, from the policy bylaw committee, is are policies reviewed just to make sure that they're current and they're good to go, rather than always wanting to do like an overhaul, I suppose, right? Because like with this one, if it's something that's like part of an annual or a cycle of review, then we would catch it all the time, right? And we'd review it on maybe it's every 2 years or whatever it might be.
This was 2015 was the last review on this one.
I thought that they had to be reviewed at least once every,
I think it's every 4 years.
isn't it every term?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're notorious at kind of getting a little bit behind, right? Like we did at our previous policy bylaw committee, when I was a part of it, is that we had committed that we were going to continue to just each meeting, pull out a couple so that we would review them, so that we were always on top of it, right? So is that something that we just leave it as a matter then, rather than referring this forward? Just say our intent is to be more diligent.
I would say that rather than just referring this one, I think that needs to be a practice within the policy bylaw review committee. I think that there needs to be like a structure put in place where we say that, at each monthly meeting, we review these ones, and then have that, so that you go through all of them in whatever time frame that is. And then this one will they'll automatically come up. And I thought that for some reason that they had to be done at least reviewed every 4 years. And so if that's the case, then in a term.
We're reviewing them and not signing off as having been reviewed. We only sign off when we revise them. Is that our process?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the last time that the policy bylaw went through, we just put an overall disclaimer at the start that we have reviewed them in this period. If there are changes made, obviously there are dates made too, but if there's no changes, we don't necessarily put that it has been changed. And policy bylaw committee right now is started the process of going through the book with the intent of in the 4-year period to go through the book.
It might not be a bad idea though, just to have a review date.
That'd be great.
Just to, I know that it feels a little more onerous to do it that way, but, this appearance was 2015.
Councilor Barnes?
Scott is the chair of this one, but I'll just jump in on this because that is definitely one of the things that's, it's a concern, it's something that we've definitely noticed that the review date hasn't changed. And so admin has pointed out that, there's been a disclaimer and stuff like that, but moving forward, we are, I thought we were putting, revision dates on them regardless, so that, like, we've known that it's been touched on and updated. But I couldn't agree more with Mayor Martina, there does need to be a structure for going through it, because right now, it is just to attempt to go through them every 4 years. And yeah, I think that having some kind of structure in place to further do it, and even things like what we were talking about earlier with contracting them out and really having a plan in place for getting on top of these and getting the work done, I think is really important.
Oh, yeah, who could we have to someone to come in and just go through them? To, rather than reviewing and just saying this sounds good, like, are we current? Are we current with our practices with what's out there, right?
Yeah.
It might not be a bad idea. I understand what you're saying now about contracting out for something like this now.
Okay, so I put the motion on the table, that we do all things, and it's not going to policy bylaw review. Is there any more discussion based off of this? And if there's not, I'm going to just call the question, and then if we need to make another, we can. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Okay, moving on now to the ATCO natural gas franchise agreement. I saw that we all have this on our tables here. So yeah, I'm just gonna turn this over to you here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So part of our franchise agreements that we have with both ATCO and Fortis does allow Fortis once a year to review the franchise fee that we are going to collect. So ATCO has provided us notice with theirs that they want notice prior to November 1st of what we choose to do. Currently, our percentage is 7.5%. It does show the revenues that's being generated there. I did ask for and didn't have in time for the council meeting, sort of the historical, what other communities are doing, as well as what our sort of over the last few years has been. So you can see the listing there of various municipalities that do charge this. There also is ATCO has the ability to charge a tax as well as a franchise fee. We just did a franchise fee. And as you can see, we have lowered it from 2016, we're at 10%. We're now at 7.5. And if you look at, as indicated, we can go as high as 35%. And if you look at the varying across the board, there are definitely lots that are at 35, well, not lots, but some at 35, some in the 20s. So we're definitely not high at the 7.5, but we do have the opportunity to either say raise, lower, or no change sort of thing. So it is here, and Fortis will be coming forward probably in the next month or so as well. So.
All right.
I'm wondering if we could get a bit of a breakdown where that money goes that's generated. What's the purpose of that money?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the purpose in a sense is to pay for their facilities, like it's a grant in lieu that they're paying us for their pipelines or their power lines or that type of stuff in our community. So as I say, we could charge a tax if we wanted, as opposed to this. This is something that, so as far as where it goes, I mean, you'll see it on the financial statements. I believe it shows up under administration, franchise, and concession fees. So it doesn't necessarily say that it goes towards a particular thing. Fortis is somewhat, as obviously there is replacement of poles and lights and that type of stuff should go towards that. ATCO's is kind of like I say, it is a grant in lieu for their facilities, but we don't necessarily put it towards parks or replacement of vehicles or anything. It's revenue that's projected under administration and utilized in the overall calculation of mill rates and stuff at the end of the day. It's a those, so as indicated there, it generates roughly based on what this says, about $55,000 from ATCO. We get roughly about the same, I think, from Fortis, depending on the percentage. And so, which if you don't get it this way, comes via taxes, I guess, or you cut services or whatever the case is. So.
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion, please, that we inform that no change will be required.
Great, thank you. Discussion. I guess I just have a question. Like I understand that this is one of those things, right, that's can be viewed somewhat as a hidden tax in some regards, right?
Yeah.
But like, when I really look at this though, like, we are very, very low. And a lot of other municipalities are like significantly higher than us. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, who's even lower? Millsburg, Hillspring. But like,
For the bottom fifth.
like, and so I'm understanding that this is more so just like, it's a revenue line essentially for us, right? Like, and that it goes to where it needs to go.
It should go to things like Christmas lights and stuff like that that go on our poles. Yeah, the more solar types things so that we can have more Christmas lights, really. I mean, if we had a designated location for the money to go, it'd be easier to say, well, okay, let's generate some revenue.
Cause like,
The other thing to keep in mind, if I may, Madam Mayor, is, this does apply to like exempt properties as well. So in our case, we don't have like a lot of exempt properties or those types of things. So if you do have like schools and churches and those types of things, in some municipalities, obviously you have to pay the power and gas bill. So it does, get some revenue from people other than, it also in some cases, if you're a renter on the property and you pay the gas and the power bill, you're getting some monies from those people as opposed to totally from the landlords, things. So I mean, and like you say, it is intended to help cover replacement of the facilities in your community for these two particular businesses happening for us. So to just say 0%, like I say, you're gonna have to come up with the dollar somewhere or not. But
when you talk about replacement of facilities, like what are you mean like ATCO's, like
well, like I say,
infrastructure?
any pipeline work that they might have to do to replace any power poles, street lights that they replace.
So-
They don't charge us for that if they're their power poles, but it does help, with replacement of that, in that sense. And it does help when we do put in new power poles and things in some of our subdivisions, they give us a special rate for some of that stuff as well. So, and we do get kickback from some of those when the developers do their stuff, so.
So then just to clarify that, so this money that we collect, this 59,000, so say some power poles broke or whatever happened, does that come out of this pot of money or does ATCO actually do that themselves?
They do themselves, but.
Okay,
Really, this is considered, this really is just considered a fee in lieu of our ability to tax. For.
So we could, on the other hand, in a sense, ATCO has the ability to, we could charge them a tax for their linear assessment or whatever you want to call it that goes through our community. We choose, and we could do both. If I showed you the other sheet, some places like, I just pick on Coaldale, for instance, does both. When I look at it,
so they tax ATCO, so they tax ATCO and they tax, or we get the thing from the residents, so you're getting it from both sides at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we choose not to.
we choose not. So this is, like I say,
Yeah.
for every power pole, every gas line, everything that's in our community, just like oil wells and stuff in the counties and that type of stuff. They make some of those make big dollars from some of those things, and there's a fee for that.
But because the reason we don't tax is because ATCO just passed that tax on to the consumer anyway, right?
Well, they do this too, I guess, because it appears on your gas bill or your power bill, whichever the case is, that kind of thing.
And I think that's why we keep this so low, is because, well, we can say it's in lieu of taxing, it's just a fee that they charge our residents, right? So that's why I think we've always just traditionally tried to keep it low and recognize it, yeah, you know what, we do need some of those funds and, you know, we're able to utilize them. Sometimes when we're putting up new lights or we're upgrading, like our Christmas lights along the poles and stuff. But it's not a lot of revenue that's required, right?
It's a grant in lieu of taxes, so.
Yeah.
Tabor has two levels, high use and low use.
I think that this is something like, well, like I agree with this for this year. I think that like, because if we can look at this every year, like, I'm just thinking like $55,000, like even if it was, you know, 10% or 15 or whatever, like that, like, so say it was double, just as an example, like that's $110,000, which then, like that $55,000 could go to support something like we're talking about, you know, a community services division, or those things that we said that we really are looking at, like that we need, right? And it's not, like you said, solely coming from the owners of the property, it's coming from the residents of it as well, and so it's kind of diversifying it a little bit. And so I think I like it, and just because we are so low compared to others, you know, like maybe that's something that we need to potentially consider moving to the future too.
You know, and so I would be open to a friendly amendment if the goal was to gradually increase, if we were to look at a 1% increase. I feel like going up gradually would be better than jumping like from this up to say 15 or something, right? Like doubling, because then our residents are paying like, what, $100 over the year.
Yeah.
Right, as opposed to 46 or something,
Yeah.
right?
We'll go to, Sienna, and then we'll go to transports.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if you do choose to change it, we do have to publicly advertise the fact that we're changing it, and we do have to submit that to the Alberta Utilities Commission. So, I mean, it's not that we can just randomly do it. I mean, if somebody complains, they would take a look at that. And that's sort of scenarios.
But it's nothing to advertise it with a 1% increase.
Small item.
If that's a choice that council wanted to make, right? I mean, given the current environment, are people in a position to tolerate the perception of paying more, right?
And I think that's a discussion, and so I'd love to hear, what everyone else thinks. Councilor Burns, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's definitely, I think there's room to have conversations around, if it could be more or less and what it could potentially fund. And then, you know, if it's within the law, I think that our residents would be accepting that. But I just had a few questions about, so if it were to be like 0, then how does that work? If you don't charge, then you don't charge the residents anything, and then you also don't get anything? So it's just a big old 0, okay. Okay, no, that makes sense. And then with the tax then, so the municipalities that only do the tax, then it's like, what would be like I guess it would be, like, what would be the difference between doing the tax or doing this, or it's just written a different way? But I mean, obviously some people see the benefit of doing the tax versus doing the rate rider. I suspect it's probably because people do feel it's a little bit of a hidden tax, and that way it's just kind of done broadly.
Yeah, there's a percentage that's applied to the tax as to how it goes. We've never traditionally done it, so I'm not even sure how that works. I mean, to a certain extent, we do, I believe, do a journal entry for when we get some of this money, it goes towards, in a sense, a tax anyway. It's internally done, but I mean, basically, like I say, we get the 55,000, it's general revenue.
This is because I know that when we had done it last year, we did have a resident come forward and speak. It wasn't about this one, it's about the Fortis one, yeah. And just, you know, kind of keeping that in mind, and, you know, the rising cost of everything in mind, but balancing that out with what our community needs. I actually think that, like, is there a date that we need to decide this on? Because, like, I almost think there could be more thought and discussion on this, and then even make it further down the road. Once we, like, I appreciate this information, it's really good, and I like the comparative data, that's very helpful. But I think that I might need to stew on this for a bit.
We'll go see how that will check.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess it's indicated in here, it just says a request to change must be received by November 1st.
We have a bit of time.
Yeah, so I would be happy to withdraw my motion if, if one was to want it, and think about it and talk about it.
I think it would be good information, like you were asking for the tax component, to see like that comparison versus, so I know you're saying that like where can we get poles cheaper or something like that, like the comparison wise, if we were to tax them versus getting cheaper poles, where are we better off? And I guess that I'd be curious to kind of see that, because like that's not even explored within this document.
No, but like say our, I think it's called a 30-page agreement for franchise agreement has the option for one of the other whole goals.
But I
But I
think,
don't think Fortis has the taxing, I think only Annapolis has the taxing.
I guess that I just feel like we have partial information to make a full decision is where I'm at right now. And so I'd love to like be able to explore it a little more, so. Sorry, Councilor Ackman, sorry, when's your turn?
Not a problem. Like you said, I would be curious to see where the tax rates are in other municipalities in the area, because there are a number of municipalities that are lower on franchise fees, but they may be charging tax as well, right? So just to have that comparative data, I think that this is a good snapshot of the franchise fee part of it, but it doesn't show the whole picture. And I think that people need that information to make an informed decision. So like Councilor Florence had mentioned, I'd be all right pushing this one back until we have a little bit more information, a little bit of time to look at what this could look like down the road and where the best benefit lies.
Councilor Kotry?
I was just doing some math. Add 1% is about $10 a year per person.
Yeah, because it's right. Isn't that the annual?
Per person, per household.
Gross.
Okay. So is everyone in agreement to kind of take this away, come back with more information and then have a discussion on it?
Can we bring it up at our next council meeting? Would that be, because that's then in, 2 weeks? Or sorry, yes, it would be the October 4th meeting.
I think that'd be great. Right, well, thank you for the discussion on that. We're gonna rescind that motion. There we go. Okay, and then the last item that we have on our agenda here is the Alberta Municipalities Financing and Municipal Infrastructure in Alberta webinar. Would anyone like to attend this?
Yes.
It's September 8th, Thursday.
Okay.
This Thursday at
Okay.
3 o'clock.
Okay,
I would like to attend it as well. I think it's very important as we move into the new framework to learn about it and to learn how to leverage it. So.
I think it's important for anybody to go.
I just want to be able to attend that day. Would you like to attend?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, I will make the motion, that Deputy Mayor Caldwell, Councilor Florence, Councilor Ackman, okay, are hereby authorized to attend financing and municipal infrastructure in Alberta webinar on September 8th, 2022. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And the last thing, just a motion to adjourn at 8:56.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I move that the meeting is adjourned at 8:56 p.m.
all right, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Are people registering on their own?
For the webinar,
Yeah.
I think Les usually does that.
We can fire away tomorrow, probably.
Yeah.
Do it tomorrow morning.
I actually registered.
Oh, did you?
I was already registered.
There you go.
Sorry, I probably shouldn't have registered.